Hello, everybody. It's Susan again, and here we're going to talk a little bit about the lunar eclipse coming up in Pisces for the first time in 18 and a half years or so. It's going to be on the 18th of September, and it's going universal time going to be at 2:35 a.m. And so you'll have to adjust for your time going back a few hours for North America or South America and going ahead a few hours for Europe and the rest of the world. So it could be on the 17th of September, technically speaking, for the North Americans, South Americans. Doesn't really matter because it's got a large orb of activity. So anyway, a full moon has a nice orb of a couple of days on either side of it when it's quite active. It's just that we're looking here at the perfected aspect. So what we're looking at is the chart for the eclipse and not for the full moon, which happens only a few moments after the eclipse. But this is why you'll find that the sun in this chart is at 25 degrees 38 minutes and the moon is at 25 degrees and 3 minutes, because this is when the eclipse itself is at its maximum. So a full moon chart is focused on the exactitude of the degree between the opposition of the sun and the moon. Both are valid. It's just that I'm looking at this as an eclipse, not just as a full moon. Um, so that for those of you who pay attention to these things, that's why this chart doesn't line up in terms of the full moon. So we're looking at a Pisces axis for the first time, as I said, in a very long time. And this is the beginning of nearly 2 years of this energy of Pisces Virgo prominent in our life. Now, we've already had a good long time, a year and a half of Saturn energy in Pisces. And we've also had 12 or even, 13 and a half years of Neptune in Pisces. And so it's not that this energy is entirely foreign to us. But when the eclipses happen, things change quite suddenly. There's some shifts in energy that are usually palpable collectively and individually if you have placements that are close to these degree placements. And so again, that would be anything kind of leading up to the 25-degree point, let's say 22 through 28, or you could even stretch it a few more degrees on either side. With an eclipse, you also might find that things turn around in ways that are unexpected. So eclipses happen in sudden ways, but it's often not things that you weren't anticipating. It's just that the way that things come about are unanticipated, a little bit in the Uranian energy. Now, here we still have the North Node in Aries. And this is not quite a hybrid eclipse because that has a different meaning, but it means that we're combining the Aries energy where we find Rahu or the North Node and the Piscean energy where we find the moon. Now, the other thing that happens is the next eclipse after this will happen in Libra, and that's the 2nd of October. I'll do a separate video about that. And that will be the last eclipse in Libra in this cycle of Aries Libra. But then later in 2025, 25th of March, actually, we get an eclipse in Aries. And so here we have then the beginning of a Pisces cycle, which will not be repeated in 2 weeks after the eclipse. And it will be repeated in the middle of March, so the 14th of March, which will be a Virgo new moon. A Virgo full moon, rather. And that will then be followed by another eclipse, but in Aries at about 9 degrees of Aries. So here we're looking at something of a period of time where we're blending these energies quite a lot. And I just want to delineate a few of the things that stand out for me and keep this in mind, not only for now. And I consider I'm taping this, or sorry, recording. We don't tape, do we? Showing my age. I'm recording this on the 27th of August, which is a Tuesday. So we're roughly 3 weeks out from this eclipse, which is happening on a Wednesday, the 18th of September. For me, this is definitely eclipse energy. It will for sure kick off when we have the new moon on the 3rd of September. So, but keep these things in mind, and especially some of these placements for not just this cycle, but really for the 6 months or even 2 years to come, because these energies are going to keep repeating in ways that are changing our lives. And it particularly so because the outer planets are also in a process of shifting energy in the tropical zodiac. They're changing signs in 2025, 2026, 2027. So we're here really on the cusp of those bigger changes. So, where to begin? It's just so much information. By the way, if you don't know me, I'm Susan Hopkinson. I do consulting astrology. I like to work individually with people. I like to work on overcoming your particular obstacles to happiness and to feeling good in your skin. My area of expertise has become really looking into the chart from what is going on through your family and your lineage. And I'm writing a book on that right now, which is why you don't see me very often on YouTube. And also, I don't monetize my videos, which is also why you don't see much of me because YouTube won't really push me to the forefront. And when a video is not monetized, they're kind of relegated to the dusty corner of YouTube. And so if you would like to, if you like the video, if you would like to like it, and if you want to subscribe, please do, and hit the bell notification for my future videos. That way you'll keep track of me if you're interested in what I have to say. And otherwise, anyway, thanks for being here. So, and also thanks to all of you who have donated. I really appreciate that through the links in the description box. I'm really grateful for that because it does not only gives me a moral boost, but it gives me a financial boost while I'm taking some time away from a lot of my client work to get this book done. Right, let's come back to this eclipse now. I'm really keen to show some of the ways that this eclipse is going to launch a new energy. And one of the ways that that stands out to me is that there's a kite formation here. Now, I don't often talk about the formations in a chart. I happen to have a kite in my own chart, so I know a little bit about kites. Um, and what I find about them is that they give us an opportunity to kind of keep landing on our feet, as long as we understand the meaning of the point of the kite. And in this case, it's a little bit complicated because we have a moon in Pisces with Neptune at the very tip of the kite. And this is in opposition to the sun, of course, in Virgo, with a very different sensitivity. So, and by the way, I did a really lovely video with Bukola, who's another YouTuber and a wonderfully spiritual person. So look for that video. I'll link it below this video because we talked a lot about the more symbolic meanings of these axes, the Pisces Virgo energy and where we're headed towards. So if you haven't seen that one, catch up on that. It's more general. It's not specific to the configurations. It does call them in though. So this moon and Neptune can be really, really beautiful, especially I would say on an individual level. We'll look at the charts sign by sign as we go forward. But this can be a little more tricky as a collective. And often this is the case with mundane astrology. Things are usually much more challenging. We have a lot more leeway when we're looking at our personal charts. When we have our own personal experience, we have an enormous amount of choice, and especially a choice in the way we hold our attitudes around things, which is actually quite relevant here with the moon, because the moon represents our way of thinking. It's the mind, the foundation of the mind. It's also our spirit. It's our sense of our emotional connection to life, our soul, if you like. And so this is something in Pisces that is extremely tender. It's very sensitive. It can be also oversensitive in Pisces, and therefore can be it can wax and wane even more perhaps in Pisces than any other sign because of that emotional fragility. And Pisces can have a sense that, especially there with Saturn on the other side, which is still technically a conjunction, it's 10 degrees away from the moon. Saturn can dampen that emotion or it can stress the emotion of the Pisces moon, while the Neptune can either overinflate the emotions or create a certain sense of delusion or disillusionment. It can also be, for those who really put the effort in, a profoundly spiritual energy that can lead to a lot of breakthroughs, and that's partly because of this kite. So the kite energy gives an opportunity to adapt, to change. So we have in the kite, we have this opposition. What creates the kite is the backbone here, the opposition, which happens to be the sun and the moon, but including the Neptune as well. And then we also have this interesting combination of sextiles that you see here. We get a double sextile and a trine that forms the kite. And so we've got three trines, and then we have a double sextile, and part of the trine is built into the top segment of the kite. So we look for the solution, let's say, from the top segment of the kite. That's Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, plus the moon. So we're looking at big shifts. We're looking at incredible opportunities for big change. And this is socially, of course, culturally, socially, personally, of course. And this is going to require a certain amount of courage and discernment. And that's where we look back to the sun in Virgo, which is really about a sense of discernment and understanding what is really happening, what's really going on. At this time, we also have Mercury, which is coming back into the beams of the sun. So as I'm doing this, on the 27th of August, Mercury is emerging from the beams of the sun, and it's quite strong. So now Mercury is visible. And this creates a kind of a period of time just leading up to this eclipse where we really do have an opportunity to engage in reflective thinking and conversations and agreements that can lead us to our whatever the goal is that we're working towards. Whereas now at this stage of the eclipse, Mercury is moving towards the sun, and so it's going deeper under the beams once again. It's part of the Mercury retrograde cycle, this dance that gets close to the sun. So that's not so concerning. Mercury is very strong at this time, but it's something to reflect on, that we may not be using our best discernment, or at least, let's say, we might be focusing on areas of life that are diluted or somehow clouded by that Neptune. And again, as I mentioned, this can be on a personal level extremely creative. It can be very spiritual, and there can be opportunities for deep spiritual growth and awakening that are even grounded by that Saturn. The challenge is, though, that Neptune and the moon can be very, very difficult. And these outer planets tend to be quite pesky. They don't tend to bring easy transformation. So the transformation can come through things that have us realizing we've made mistakes, or that have us realizing we're knocking on the wrong door, or that the house is collapsing around us and it's time to move on. And that can take the shape of a change that is, you're ready for that change and you're really ready to move on. But it can also take the shape of something that comes in a way that doesn't feel comfortable, or you know that it needs to happen, but you're not really too psyched for it. One of the things that stands out at this time is the Saturn and Neptune conjunction that is also building over these next couple of years. And I think that's this eclipse is pulling that conjunction together for the first time. The moon is between the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, so they're still quite far apart. Within 15 degrees, it's worth looking at a conjunction of slower moving planets in a natal chart, or especially in these times where we're really transforming. This, for me, already operates as a conjunction, but Saturn is separating away again. And so we're looking at something that is a slow-moving process. We have sudden changes within the slow-moving process, but overall the background is going to be transforming. So for those of you who find the idea of change or surprises or challenges coming up difficult, you want to keep that in mind, that you're going to be waking up every day in the moment that you are in, and able to make the minor changes that are necessary in the context of the day. So don't go too far forward in time. A while ago, somebody was asking me to look at the 2030 configurations. Like, let's just try and get through this year. Just take it one day at a time. This present moment is also a beautiful representation of the energy of Pisces, where really it's about merging with the expansion of life itself. This is this moment, taking a breath in this moment and being with life itself. And that can only happen when you're aware in the present moment. So if your mental agitation is taking you too far into the future or too far into scenarios that could go wrong, or on the other hand, too far into contraction and dogmatic thinking and separation, you're going to suffer enormously over the next couple of years because we really do have to change our way of thinking. Pisces is about the merging with all, and the Saturn-Neptune, the conjunction doesn't perfect until it reaches zero Aries, but it really is a strong conjunction for the next sort of 2 years, especially 2025, and perfecting in February 2026. So we're looking at a time where we want this Piscean energy to be a part of the new Aries thing, the pioneering energy that's coming at 0 degrees of Aries. And I do see that part of what we need to do collectively and certainly individually is to recognize who we really are. This is the way to overcome all of the anxiety and fear and anger and separation and all of the rest that is coming from our current situation, a global situation. So Pisces on the downside can be about evasive, fantasizing or running away from problems. It can be around issues that are idealized or fantasized or wishful thinking. And that kind of escapism is not really helpful. I'm not sure Saturn is going to let us get away with that. So the Neptune in Pisces is actually going to get a little body, a little structure, while Saturn is getting closer and closer. But we also have to beware that what we can feel is optimistic and looking on the bright side can also be about avoidance. And at the end of the day, if we're alive in this 3D format, life is hard. It can be difficult. There are stresses. There are things go wrong. Things become difficult. And to pretend otherwise is to go into that Piscean vision of utopia and not want to deal with the Virgo aspects of taking responsibility and seeing in the moment the little things that can be done to heal the collective or the individual suffering. So Pisces is like especially the moon. Pisces moon is the consummate enabler energy. So it can enable things that really shouldn't be allowed to happen. Like people with Pisces moon tend to tolerate things like a partner who's abusive, or dealing with their addictions and covering up for that, or dealing with their dishonesty and covering up for that. And this can happen in all kinds of different configurations in the chart, but particularly that Pisces moon, it just has this capacity to keep trying to look on the bright side. And especially in combination with Neptune, that can end up working against us collectively, and then of course a person individually. So it's something to be aware of. What this might be one of the questions to ask: what are we collectively currently tolerating in terms of our dynamic, in terms of our connection to all, in terms of the awareness that we are all one, inseparable? What are we tolerating that should not be tolerated? What is it that we are putting a gloss on, as the British say, or what is it that we're excusing based on the lower Piscean vibration of religion, for example? Or some kind of belief in a better future, that sacrifice today for a better future. The truth is there is only this now, and this is actually where we get to the Piscean quality of understanding the truth with a capital T of life itself. And so if we stay with an unrealistic or idealistic way of looking at things, they're going to get better, they will be better, things will be better, always going towards the future, we're not dealing with the now. And in this very moment, as I'm speaking to you, you can wake up. There is no future forecasting. There's no future astrological configuration that is going to have you wake up. That's a choice that you can make in any moment. And this waking up is simply waking up to the truth of who you are and who we are as a life form, what life is, that you are inseparable from the slimy toads and snails down at the end of your garden and all of the rest of humanity. We're all part of the same energy. We're all part of the same thing. That's waking up. Waking up is not about sharing a political ideology or a political way of experiencing life. It's not about being comfortable. It's about recognizing what's true. And so we want to get away from a lot of what is building at this time, which I do think is also part of the Saturn Neptune. Certainly, it can also be a part of the energy of the North Node in Mars, especially with Mars squaring the North Nodes. Mars rules the North Node and is squaring the North Node at the time of this eclipse. We have to be aware of ideological thinking. We have to be aware of how we're really pulling in things that can be self-harming. This kind of cult-like thinking that's become very, very strong. When Mars is squaring the nodes, especially ruling the North Node, we have a choice to make. We have to understand the seriousness of the choice that we have to make. Mars is in Cancer. Mars in Cancer can represent the inherent danger or the difficulties within what you might describe as the family, or within the area of where you feel safe and nurtured. We can think of that as the human family, as our global family. And with Mars in Cancer, there can be some real challenges there. It's like the calls coming from in the house kind of thing. And we have to understand that the choice point of Mars squaring the nodes here, it is a separating square moving towards the South Node, but still it's very, very tight. It's within just over a degree of a square. The meaning here is we have to make choices based on what is new or different in the way that we relate to our security, our emotional security and needs, our connection to one another. Mars is very divisive, and Cancer is about nurturance, and it's about family and home and nationhood as well. So this is without a doubt something we have to grapple with at the time that we're also trying to grapple with this direction, this new direction that the moon and Neptune in Pisces is pulling us towards. The solution is coming from this understanding our perhaps our emotional nature, or how we might be avoiding or evading responsibility for things that really we shouldn't be tolerating. And you can look in your own life. Where is that happening in your own experience? Now, the moon can represent any emotional connection. It can represent the mind in general, and it can also represent home and mothers, mothering, and so on. It's a mature woman. The moon is the mature feminine, and Venus is the younger, so-called younger feminine in the archetype. And then, of course, we have the rulership here of Jupiter, which is in Mercury-ruled Gemini. So Jupiter is now emboldened, let's say, it's stronger than it was before, because now Mercury, again, is back in its home, just like it was in July, back in its home sign, in its place of exaltation. So Jupiter is given a nice boost here. It's in a separating square with the sun, and then of course it's also in a separating square with the moon and Saturn. So these tensions with Jupiter have had us thinking about what do we believe, and Jupiter is also part of this triad here with Neptune, the moon, and Saturn, trying to get us to think in a way that is cooperative. Jupiter in Gemini is very social, very cooperative. It's about finding connections. It's about conversation and agreement. And Gemini wants to be friendly, and it has options. It's a mutable sign, so we have a lot of mutable energy here with the Pisces and the Gemini Virgo. All pulling together through the rulership of Jupiter, especially strongly. And so that mutability means, look, I'm willing to change. I'm willing to cooperate. Things can be different. And then we have this Cancer Mars ruling the Aries North Node, where we have this cardinality. The cardinal energy is all about new things, something new, something different showing up. Venus is also very strong in her own sign. It's interesting, sometimes I don't keep the ascendants and midheavens of these lunar configurations, but I kept them this time, particularly because Venus is on the IC in opposition to Chiron, which is on the midheaven of this chart. And I thought that was quite profound, because that cardinal energy for change is coming about from healing something that was or still is a pain in our identity, a suffering and some kind of issue that needs to be called to attention in our sense of identity. Our, let's say with Chiron in Aries, our sense of a right to exist as we believe we are. Now, the challenge with Aries can be that there's a strong ego identity. The sun is exalted in Aries partly for that reason. There's a lot of self-identity. But what the rest of the chart is saying is we need to think about other people. We need to think about our collective, the Pisces energy. We need to think about relationship, the relational qualities here. Venus is sufficiently far away from the South Node that she's less damaged by the South Node. So when Venus gets close to the South Node, especially even if she's ruling it, she's drained of her charms, let's say, of her influence. But here we've got her in a really lovely, strong position. She's moving away from the South Node, and she's in a separating but still active trine to Jupiter. So there's a lot of possibility here. There's a lot of cooperative energy. It's up to us again. The solution here, it's what's in our mind. What is the stuff that we have to take responsibility for? How are we being how are we avoiding responsibility? How are we managing our spiritual growth? How are we aware of the connection that we have with all of life? And are we helping or harming that by whatever we're thinking, saying, doing, or acting upon? Let me just check my notes because I wrote some things down to be sure that I said them. And I think I may have said them all. The other aspect of this, of course, is the let's focus a little bit on the energy of the victim and martyr. These are very strong energies that run through our modern lifetime. That's not a new thing, but it's particularly relevant at this juncture. And this idea of what is my responsibility and to what extent am I allowing myself to be perceived as a victim or a martyr? Where do I perpetuate suffering and then complain about it? Where do I, through my thinking or through my actions or through my way of disowning responsibility, where do I keep complaining? And that's the delusional aspect of that Neptune and the moon. Where is it that we can reach into a cooperative with the Jupiter trining Venus in these air signs that are very relational, very optimistic, very constructive? Where can we generate something different based on understanding each other? We do have this potential for change. We've got Uranus here in a trine, a nice Earth trine to the sun that's trining Pluto. So there's this real dynamic for change here that does include the Neptune at the peak, again with the moon as well. And so it's definitely something that is available to us. And so when we take responsibility for our share in it, when we take responsibility for our way of perceiving others, and do we others, like this can also be the Chiron in Aries as well. It's us doing the othering, and the square with Mars that is ruling the North Node from Cancer. Where are we causing the havoc? Where are we the one creating the strife, let's say, in our own household, in our own nation, because Cancer also represents nations. And can we understand how delusional it is to think, taking again from the highest Piscean energy, the idea that we are somehow isolated and separate from people who live next door or halfway around the world, and that we can somehow cast others away and not suffer from that. The thing that comes to mind very strongly is there's a lot of talk, of course, right now of the nuclear threat Someone recently asked about whether I thought the Saturn-Neptune had something to do with the nuclear threat. I'm not so sure. I honestly just don't know. I looked through historically. It's not really directly connected to nuclear developments. There's so many other things that are involved with that. And of course, the Saturn and Neptune is very strong. It shows up very strongly in modern Soviet and Russian history. But that is also because Saturn rules the chart of the Russian Federation, so that's quite normal. It also ruled the chart of the USSR, so it's the ascendant ruler that's quite normal that Saturn always has a strong signature. Then the ascendant ruler will always play key roles in any particular chart. In this particular chart, it's a Leo ascendant, so we're looking a lot to the sun to tell us how this chart will bring out the flavor, let's say, of the energy of the day. And we've already seen it's very much a part of this eclipse. It's the reflected light of the sun that causes the moon to be highlighted at the full moon. The moon doesn't have its own light. It's always about the dependency on the sun itself. But if we come back to that Piscean energy of the awareness of our collective self, our collective body, the inseparable nature from life itself, and the fact that we're not doing this, we have to then remind ourselves of this, because the energy of Mars in that North Node and pulling through the Chiron, feelings of insecurity and doubt that cause fear, here's another big word, fear, which allows us to be controlled and which allows us to feel like we're isolated units. And it's important to understand that's quite a deliberate provocation through psychological warfare, which is another thing that comes up through Saturn and Neptune. The the hugeness of what is going on in terms of psychological warfare, which comes through even what we call the entertainment industry. So again, Neptunian word, the entertainment industry, modern cinema and so on, is related to Neptune. And it's built in. And so it's so insidious, we don't see that it's happening. And yet what happens is it chips away at our sense of being one of many, one aspect of all of life itself. And so we fear the other, and that's deliberate. The only way that we can cultivate war or support for war is to cultivate fear. And so check who you believe is your enemy. Check that thinking, that notion that anyone is your enemy is part of the problem, because it makes you easy to manipulate. It makes you easy to behave badly. It makes it easy for you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise want to do to another person. And that's again symbolized by that Mars in Cancer, particularly right now, squaring that North Node. It's fomenting the fear, fomenting the separation right at home. Like I said, the call's coming from inside the house. And so what we think is our enemy is internally, it's our way of thinking, but it's also what is being manipulated from behind the scenes, not necessarily by the person we're told is the enemy. So that the nuclear stuff, the psyops, warfare that is kind of under the radar, but very, very present, is something we should bring to our attention, especially as the North Node will come through Pisces, while Saturn and Neptune are still there. And so the other aspect of that, which calls forward now the Saturn and Neptune conjunction, which again, I kind of feel this is setting off this eclipse. I think the other thing that is coming up for me is biological warfare. So Neptune in Pisces is known for, Pisces in general is related to contagions and mysterious illnesses and potions of all kinds. Scorpio is really the one responsible for the medicines and poisons and so on. But this is the Saturn Neptune at the 0 degrees of a Mars ruled Aries. For me, has a lot to do with this bio warfare, bio restrictions based on those things, things that are going to be injected or given or done to us in some way, shape, or form that are going to restrict our movement, restrict our capacity to connect. And that's partly the Saturn in Aries as well. That will be another aspect of that. Saturn in Aries in a natal chart deals with issues of self-esteem and deals with issues of agency. And we will need to buckle up, I'd say, in this particular year and a half to come, to really root ourselves down into a spiritual awareness of what life is all about, because otherwise we're going to be very, very easily destabilized and manipulated by fanatical thinking, this kind of fear-based thinking, and the belief that there's going to be somebody out there that will come to rescue us. There's no rescuer. There is no savior. You save yourself. The Christ consciousness is not a human being. Christ consciousness is what is alive in all of us. It's the light in all of us. You can call it Buddha nature, Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness, universal consciousness, whatever you like. It's the light in all of us. That's the Piscean energy. We need to cultivate that. Don't wait for your favorite politician or your team leader, your dear leader, or your religious spiritual leader to save you. It's really, this is where we have to pull in the Aries North Node, heal that Chiron in Aries, and pull it into the knowing of the Piscean energy at this time. Just after the eclipse, so which is happening on the 18th, on the 22nd of September, we have the solstice. And that solstice point brings in another few of these same aspects. But the other thing that's really exact around the time of the solstice is that Venus is squaring Pluto and the sun is trining Pluto at that time. So whatever is going on in that third week leading into the second half, let's say, of September, is going to affect us quite profoundly in terms of the economy, the markets, finances, but also diplomacy. And so there could be something that changes in a way that is, unexpected. The sun is building very quickly after the eclipse to this trine with Uranus that it will perfect only, let's say, a day and a half afterwards. And then 3 or 4 days afterwards, it perfects the trine with Pluto. So this will be the last time that the sun trines Pluto in Capricorn. It will trine Pluto, but from Libra from this point on. And so here again, we have this symbol of something that's really quite significant. It's the end of an era. It's the end of something that we have experienced with that Pluto for so long. 16 years or so with Pluto in Capricorn. But the sun trining Pluto can give us an opportunity to see things from a different place, the discernment that is necessary to see what Pluto going through Capricorn has shown us, what needs to change structurally, what needs to change in terms of authority figures or structures that have dominated over the last, say, 250 years, which now are being transformed. I want to just one last time, though, emphasize that there is a lot of totalitarian energy that is in the chart. It's building again over the next 2 years. I think that is also very much a part of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. The qualities of totalitarianism are on their own quite strong when Pluto goes into Aquarius. And again, it goes back into the cultish thinking, the fanatical thinking, that kind of extremism that can tear us all apart. And so again, like I've said so many times, Pluto in Aquarius can, in certain people's lives, be a wonderful opportunity for connection and changing the way that we structure our society. But it can, and especially where we're coming from at this particular time, it can also be extremely challenging, that tears at the fabric of society. All the more reason to cultivate our ongoing awareness of our interdependence and our need for each other, our connection to each other. So also around the time of the solstice and then coming after the eclipse, we just get these most extraordinary developments, which I want to point out now already because they're beginning already at the energy of the eclipse, and then the eclipse energy continues very, very strongly until we get the solar eclipse that's coming in Libra on the 2nd of October. And the lunar eclipse, by the way, will continue for months to come. It's a long orb of influence here. We have on the 29th and 30th of the month, we have so the sun will be conjoining the south node. And that will be an opportunity also to make a big change, a big shift. The sun will be again in its fall. It's exalted in Aries and it's in its fall in Libra. So the sun is weakened both by being in Libra and by being in the south node. So that can also pertain to leaders of some kind, politicians or kings or leaders of some kind, always represented by the sun, or you could say governments in general in some way, but a particular leader potentially. And so the 29th, 30th is very interesting days. We also have at that same time, we've got Mercury conjoining the sun. So we've got Mercury, the south node, and the sun together. And Mars is trining Saturn on that day. And with the Mercury Sun conjunction actually is extended all the way through until the eclipse that we get on the 2nd of October. So I'm just highlighting these things because they're calling in a theme of renewal, new cycles beginning, change of leadership, change of figureheads, or a change in the dynamic around how we connect, how we relate, how we communicate with Mercury and Libra, potentially diplomatically. And that Mercury and Libra will also be then trining the Jupiter that it rules in Gemini, rather than squaring it. So it might make certain negotiations or discussions more constructive or more advantageous. We have to keep in mind, though, that the Jupiter is again in its detriment. So Jupiter is still not going to be doing exactly what we would have hoped, but it's already helped by having Mercury in a trinal aspect to it. Let's see what else I've written down here. Yeah, I think I will certainly be doing a separate video on Saturn, Neptune, and I think I'd like to call in a couple of other astrologers so we can have a kind of a panel discussion because it's a big subject. It's a lot going on. And what I want to emphasize is that although we look towards these factors as what the future might hold, the only thing that matters is the present moment. And so if you're living in fear, or if you feel isolated and alone, you want to take care of your mind, because we can never be alone, actually. You can feel lonely in a crowded room. You can feel lonely in a marriage. We're never alone. That idea is coming from the mind. And so you want to cultivate, starting with your breath, cultivate something in a very, very basic way. One of the reasons that the breath is always used in spiritual traditions is because it's the one thing that keeps us aware that we're not doing this. We're not the one running the show. And most of the time when we're going through our day, we're not breathing consciously. We're unconsciously being breathed by life itself. And so when we recognize that, it's like, wow, okay, there's something else going on beyond me. It's beating my heart. It's beating your heart. It's making me breathe. It's helping to keep the flowers growing and the trees thriving. So all of this is where you want to put your attention. Don't put your attention on the things that you lack. The mind will tell you you require a certain number of things to be happy. But as my teacher would say, Thich Nhat Hanh would always say, the conditions for your happiness are already here in this moment. And that simply requires you breathing and becoming aware of yourself, being aware of your true nature. That's the very strong message of Pisces. And that is our salvation. So it's not, don't wait for somebody else. Don't wait for some knight on a white horse or some remarkable politician who will, without exception, let you down sooner or later. Just Focus on yourself. Focus on the fact that you have never not belonged. You were never alone. It's impossible. You're part of the fabric of life itself. And this is urgent, I think, because of the nature of the times that we're living in when we're torn, quite deliberately torn apart and made to feel fear. And even when you work hard to avoid it, it still happens. We still get sucked into fear, and we still get sucked into this feeling of competition and aggression and lack. So the dynamics of our day in this moment of Kali Yuga, particularly through the context of Kali Yuga, are designed to keep us weak and separate and doubting. And you have to come back to the truth of your nature so that you can overcome that doubt. So I'll come back to this topic again and again because I find it extremely important. It's something that that is we need to be our own medicine in so many ways. We need to recognize that. And it doesn't exclude being in community. That's not what I'm saying. And again, Jupiter and Venus are both asking us to engage with other people, engage in ways that are connection oriented and conversation oriented, solution oriented. But at the same time, don't wait around for somebody to come and sort this out for you. We need to live our life in the context of what it is in this moment. And I do believe that's how we're going to get through the challenges that are ahead in terms of the change. Maybe one last word on that. The only reason there are challenges is because we don't adapt well to change. This is a human thing. We like things to be the way we want them, and that can also be one of the pitfalls of that Neptune moon. Our preferences can be so strong in one direction that we don't realize that we are actually cutting ourselves off from what is already okay at this moment. Venus is in an inconjunct to the moon at or quincunx, it's also known as, where they're in an awkward relationship, 6 signs away from each other, and it's an awkward relationship. And so we want to understand that there can be this feeling of edginess. It's not really comfortable, not really easy in some ways. The moon also is, broadly speaking, in a semi-sextile to Chiron and the midheaven at the same time. It's moving away from that, but that semi-sextile is also really uncomfortable. We still have the Jupiter square Saturn. It makes us uncomfortable. There's adjustment required. But the adjustment is mostly in our thinking, mostly in our attitude to things. So when we have the assumption that something is wrong or lacking, or that there is an enemy, or that there is somebody to be afraid of, we're torturing ourselves, and that Neptune and moon will dysfunction. That lunar energy can be diluted. The moon, remember, is the mind, the quality of the mind, our psychological state. And we find that the moon right now, and this is also if you take a mundane chart, that's the populace, it's squeezed there between what we can't really be sure of or what we can't really see clearly and what feels like a restriction. So that is something to, rather than being afraid of, it's something to tackle head on and recognize that most of what we find problematic is coming from a thought, and that it's coming from our belief system. Pisces is not about religion. That's more Sagittarian energy. It's about our belief system. What do I know? What do I have faith in? And what is true? The knowledge of gnosis. It's not bookish knowledge. It's the intuitive knowledge and the deeper knowledge of life itself. So get deep. If you're Christian, go into Christian mysticism. Go into the heart of Christ. Don't fall into the more political institutions of the church. And again, Christ is not coming to save you as a human. It's the Christ consciousness that saves. You're just giving it one label that other people will call something different, and it doesn't exclude them from your realm. Christ told us, love thy neighbor. And that's why. And there's no distinction. There's no other. If your thing is Judaism or or if it's or whatever it is, Islam, you find the essence of the belief. Forget all the other stuff. The other stuff is pulling strings and partisanship and all about who's got power and money. So withdraw from that. Don't withdraw from the world. Withdraw from what you recognize as untrue, but participate wholeheartedly in what's going on in the world around us. We need people to be there for each other and not against each other at this time. So this is the beginning of a 2-year journey. We will come back to the Libra South Node eclipse in the weeks ahead. I will certainly do a video soon enough on that. I will absolutely be coming back to this eclipse energy because I do believe these eclipses are always something that defines moments, it defines things, and we'll keep looking at all of that. So let's have a look then sign by sign, and we'll go through what the eclipse might mean for each of the 12 signs. I'll just switch it up a little bit so we can go back to Aries to begin. And so if you have Aries, ascendant, sun, or moon sign, you, of course, have this happening in your 12th house. Now, that's you have a natural zodiac, especially if you're an Aries ascendant. And that means that you get this in a very, very clear, stark way. The Pisces energy is very clear for you. All of the signs don't need any blending from house to sign. So you get them in their most clear expression. So Pisces in the 12th house is about what is hidden. It's the mystery of life. It's the things that have gone either before us or beyond our conscious awareness. It's what happens when you close your eyes. And so this is where you're going to find your peace, Aries. This is where you find your awareness, is to close your eyes and to come inside and to find that place in your mind and heart. In the tradition, mind and heart were always the same. And to recognize that there is something that you need to become aware of. This is the meaning of the full moon. There's an awareness of your spiritual nature. Now, on a practical level, this can also be something that you become aware of in terms of what you might be doing that is undoing what is important for you, or undoing something that could otherwise be constructive for you. Are you taking care of your good self? Are you taking care of your physical body? Are you taking care of your mental health? And we do have the Sun and Mercury in your 6th house of health and healing and illness and the everyday habits that will help to make that work for you. And your ruler is in your 4th house of the sort of psychological support or foundation of your life, as well as what you might consider home and what gives you a feeling of foundation in your life, mental, emotional, psychological foundation of security. So something here might be showing itself to you where you recognize that you need to become more aware of your mental attitudes, your psychological attitudes. Jupiter in the 3rd house is difficult to manage. It's Jupiter in Gemini and 3rd house. Energy can be very distracting, dispersing, that you might need to just slow down. And that's that moon in the 12th house. Slow down and step back from what you're doing, and you'll get a better sense of what it is that needs to be different in your life going forward. That's coming from a deeper intuitive place. Won't be necessarily obvious to the people around you. You also, at the same time, have Venus in your house of relationship, and that can also be quite healing. There might be some healing that you have in terms of a supportive person or qualities of relationship that are really helpful for you right now. It can come through an individual or a relationship pattern. It doesn't have to be a person necessarily, but just the way of being in relationship that can be good for you. It tends to be somebody who is represented from that 7th house energy, where you might also have a recognition of what you need to change in terms of who that might be in your life, which relationship or how you relate, because of that South Node transit going still through your 7th house until January. Pluto is back in your 10th house at the time of this eclipse, and it's only just back in the 10th house for you. So there's just one last glimpse of what's been going on in terms of your social status, your ambitions in life, what it is that you'd like to achieve, what is your focus, your vocation or career, and all of those things are calling your attention until the 19th of November. So this is an opportunity with the sun from the 6th house trining Pluto now in the 10th house for the sort of the week following the eclipse. This is an opportunity for you to recognize what needs to change or how you might want to just add some dynamism to your career or ambitions one last time, because this will be the last trine that you get from your 6th to the 10th house, something to do with your everyday tasks and work. Or again, potential around health and healing. Mars is in the 4th house, opposing the 10th. So there may be something that is calling you away from work, or that there's something more important going on either at home or in terms of your internal process that requires a lot of your attention. And so maybe whatever's going on at work is kind of on autopilot, or it can benefit from that sun trining Pluto, where you feel like things are actually well on their way in a way that you've understood now from all of these years of change. And Mars is now pulling your attention to what you personally require or what your family might require to get where you want to go. It still feeds into your career, into your 10th house, and it certainly is about you personally, because that's your ruler. Mars also rules your 8th house of what is hidden from you, or your what you might call your fears, disruption, and so on. And there may be some connection to that. That would depend on your natal chart. But as far as the eclipse chart, it doesn't seem to be highly activated. So make the most of that, Aries. It looks like a really wonderful opportunity to go deeper inside and find out what to do then from the outside after you go inside. All right. See you in the next video. For Taurus, we have this happening in your 11th house of your future and your friends and social connections, the things that you'd like to see, or your vision, let's say, for your life. It's the house of gains as well, things that you earn, or the way that you get support through your social status or through what you do in your career. This is quite a nice opportunity to see what needs to change, because Saturn is going through that 11th house and asking you to make changes there, readjusting your participation in groups or readjusting your vision for the future. Neptune may have had you disappointed in groups of friends, or a vision for the future that you thought was going to be one way and it turned out to be very, very different. And that's over an extended period of time, 13 plus years that's been happening. And the moon is drawing your attention to that. So Saturn is coming closer to Neptune. All of the rest of the next year or so, this is the big topic. And Saturn and Neptune coming together in your 11th house are really showing you how you need to make changes to get to the vision that you want, or including, who do you spend time with? Are they the people that you should be spending time with? Is that taking you in the direction that you want to go in? Your ruler, Venus, is in the 6th house. And so although she's quite happy to do the work, she might feel a little bit put upon. So that's generally speaking quite helpful. But the 6th house is usually a lot of challenges. It's the stuff that you have to overcome, the stuff that you have to do that feels routine, heavy, burdensome, or can feel more like, a task or an obligation. And so with Venus there, you put a lot of your energy there. There's a lot of you that is focused on that. This may have something to do with health. That would be true, particularly if you've been grappling with health issues over the last year, while the nodal axis has been there in your 6th and 12th house. So the North Node in the 12th, the South in the 6th, there's something that you're becoming aware of in terms of your health and healing. Of course, and you still have Uranus going through your 1st house. So you personally have changed quite a lot in this period of time of the passage from May 2018 with Uranus going through there. So that may also have changed your body, yourself, your health, your outlook on health in one way, shape, or form. But you're coming to a new way of seeing yourself. And now we've got the sun in a trine to that Uranus, trining you, along with Mercury, trining your ascendant. and even your sun or moon, depending on what you're listening for with Taurus. That trine to Uranus is showing you something that is about creative expression, creative self-expression. It can be around children, something to do with children, or something that needs your attention around children. Mercury in the house of children and creativity is ruling Jupiter in your house of your values and money, income, your wealth, your capital, whatever you might consider investments. You might also be considering investing, because the fifth house is also about taking risks and doing some investing. So you might actually be inclined to do something like that at this time, while the focus is there on what to do about the future. We also have Mars in the third house in Cancer. So this is something to be aware of in terms of how you might connect with siblings or neighbors, or in general with your family. But Mars in the third house can be a wee bit bitchy. It can be gossipy. It can be a little bit harsh. And the speech can be sometimes regretted. You might lash out and regret that. So Mars is going to be there for a very long time. So try to adjust to this dynamic and recognize that there can be power in speaking assertively, which would be a good outcome of the Mars in the third, rather than aggressively. So that's something to check against the square with the North Node. By the way, this will be I think the last square that Mars has with the nodes in Aries and Libra. Is that the last square? I think it is, because Mars doesn't come back to this degree point. And so we're really looking at the final square here. So this is an opportunity for you to check the actions. Also, the third house represents your goals, short-term goals, your willpower, how you might need to buck up against certain things that you know need changing, that you might have been resisting for some time. And with that Mars in a square to the North Node is taking you to another way of seeing yourself that can be also potentially more spiritual, more available to your inner world or your ancestral world, to issues that are intimate of all that can be sexual intimacy. It might be your spiritual intimacy. It can be about wanting to retreat, moving in a direction that allows you to spend more time on yourself. Now, that's not new. It's been there for a year, that North Node. Chiron has also been there for quite some time. So since spring of 2018, you've been dealing with these issues of finality, perhaps, or of retreat, or of disconnection from the world, not necessarily feeling that you fit in. Please listen to the introduction to this video if you haven't already, because I talk about that. That's a very important Piscean concept. What else have we got here for you? Yeah, Pluto's moved back from your 10th house into your 9th house. So you're having one last opportunity to imagine your future in terms of your purpose, or in terms of your belief. 9th house is your belief. What do I believe? And that ties in a lot to your 12th house energy as well. So this might be just putting more of a finesse on what it is that you believe, what you have faith in. And of course, these can apply to foreign lands as well. Foreigners, foreign lands, something that comes to your awareness about what you might want to do with, could be work-related. Mars in the third house, Jupiter in the second house if you work for yourself. Also, the fifth house is an entrepreneurial house with Mercury and Sun very strong. So you might be thinking about either a business project or an entrepreneurial project, or some kind of a startup-y kind of project. This could be a really dynamic time to begin that. That would work really well. It's not true that you shouldn't start things around eclipses. I wouldn't just simply do it on the day of an eclipse. Sometimes people disagree on these things, but I just feel like the energy is quite unstable in an eclipse energy, because the luminaries are weakened, the light is cut off. You wouldn't want to start something on those days, particularly unless you're the King of England, and that's in your birth signature. Then go for it. It seems to work for them. But they're into the dark arts, I think, as well. So I'm not sure that's what everybody's here for. So I would recommend, if I were your astrology, if you do want to start something, that you use the energy of this eclipse, get yourself motivated and in order, and then 2 or 3 days later, you might start to put it out there, or you wait until the new moon cycle, which will be the following eclipse, and you launch at that time. There's no, it depends on what you're doing. There's no hard and fast rule. It depends on your natal chart and how this lines up. But it's looking really interesting for business and money. Yeah, all of that. So let's carry on. We're going to have a look now at Gemini. Thanks for listening, Taurus. Good luck to you. So Gemini, this is happening in your 10th house of career, which happens to be ruled by Jupiter, which is in your first house. So there's a lot going on for you in terms of your social identity, perhaps your marital status, perhaps your career or vocational interests and motivations, and you're becoming aware of that. This awareness is bringing your attention to the world outside your front door. What do you need to do about that? Your ruler, Mercury, is in your fourth house along with the sun, and it is in a square to Jupiter, broadly speaking, at this time, and it rules the Jupiter. So that's an interesting dynamic there between your first house of self, your fourth house of what you need to feel stable and grounded, what you need to feel is your foundation in life, maybe connecting with family or whatever around family related issues, and how you deal with that out in the world. So the Saturn Neptune for you is lingering in your 10th house of career. There may be some big changes around your sense of ambition, around your sense of career, and a feeling of that needing to either stabilize or change. There may be some longer term planning going on around your career, which would be brilliant, because that is certainly what Saturn would require of you. And you're pulling yourself, your new vision for yourself, with the Jupiter there in your first house into that part of your chart. It also affects relationships, because Jupiter represents your seventh house of relationships. And now we've got something else with Pluto having moved back into your eighth house of marriage. And so with something to do with intimacy or shared wealth or shared resources of some kind, it's all being called in at this moment. This is interesting when something like this happens in an angular part, so the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th houses of your chart. You'll notice this in your life. It's going to be quite significant for the energy of Gemini, whether it's the ascendant, sun, or moon. And certainly for the ascendant, it's going to be very noticeable. If it's your sun, it can be something to do with career, especially, or your identity. And if it's your moon, it can be around home, home and family, or your mother, or your inner emotional relationship to life. But the angular houses are going to be quite important for you. So I think you're one of the signs that's going to be feeling this effect quite directly and very powerfully. And so that applies really for the next couple of years, because that constant effort, the attention that we're being called into in your 10th and first house for the next year at least, and then the next 2 years with the Pisces, is going to be really quite dynamic for you. The sun is trining Pluto from your fourth to the eighth, so that can also be around issues of mental health or the more intimate aspects of your life, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. That's creating a grand trine also with Uranus in the 12th. So there may be a shifting around your what you might describe as your faith, or your sense of awareness around patterns of behavior that may not have been constructive for you. So next July 2025, Uranus moves into your first house. So what it's doing right now is showing you something that might need to be addressed before you receive Uranus moving into your first house. Jupiter will be gone from your first house when Uranus moves in there. So Jupiter is doing this expansive energy. It's creating something of a new vision or a new sense of your identity or yourself. And then when Uranus moves in there, it allows you to show up quite differently. Uranus in the house of self can change you in very specific ways, like even the way that you look and how you show up. So with this North Node in the 11th and then going into your 10th house, as Uranus makes that shift into your first, I think this is a great time already now at the eclipse to prepare to let your freak flag fly and just start to get into this place of I know who I am and I know what I want. Um, and I mean that at the most profound level. I'm not talking about like what heroic job do you do? What do you post to Instagram? I'm talking about like who am I and who can I be? Um, this would be the greatest use, I think, of this energy right now for you. Venus is in your fifth, adding a lovely boost to creativity, and she's trining that Jupiter in your first house. So this is a time where you can really start to stretch yourself a little bit more. Mars is in the second house, where there can be quite a lot of dynamism around money or your resources. And it's squaring your North Node in the 11th. So there may be some issue around career finance, so not career, around income, finances or wealth, potentially family, especially so because the Sun and Mercury are in the house of your home and family lineage and so on. So it might be creating a tension, a choice point, let's say, that needs to be made in terms of how you see your future. So be true to yourself there, Gemini. It can be very easy for Gemini to try and play both sides and to, like the old saying, the white man speaks with forked tongue, speaking out of both sides of your mouth. So be careful of doing that and then painting yourself into a corner and feeling trapped in a sense of who am I? So be yourself. And this is an opportunity for you to be real, let's say, be real and show up in a real way. Saturn in the 10th, it requires gravitas. It requires you to show up in a real way. And the people pleasing or the desire for, the harmony that can be the ideal, of course, might have you behaving in ways that undermine yourself. And that would be something that Uranus is going to keep coming back and checking in on over the next year to 2 years while it's shifting back and forth between your 12th and your first. All right, so look for all those hidden things, all the hidden things that need to be cleared out, hidden motivations, hidden insecurities to get you where you want to go. All right, so good luck, Gemini. I'll see you in the next video. Cancer, this is happening in your 9th house of your sense of your vision for your life in the most philosophical sense. What am I here for? What is life all about? What is life? These bigger questions of life. This is also where you find quite a lot of influence from teachings, teachers, higher-minded thinking. That could be university education or some kind of religious or legal or otherwise extra individual thinking, where the third house tends to be related on individuals and your local space. The 9th house is more of a bigger picture of community in the sense of community of thinking, community of the spirit. 9th house also is where you really are aware of what it is that you're here for in so many ways. This can then feed into your 10th house of career. So what you become aware of now is nourishing your 10th house, and especially because you're pulling in the Neptune and Saturn that will conjoin at the very beginning of your 10th house. And that conjunction, it kind of is ongoing. I believe it starts kind of now because they're in orb within 15 degrees for me. That's within an orb of conjunction for these very slow moving, very highly influential planets. And then we'll see that keep getting closer and closer as Saturn then in 2025 gets really close to Neptune. And then they both go into the 10th, and then finally February 2026 conjoin one last time at 0 degrees of Aries, so that it takes the energy from what you're developing now in your 9th house of what do I have faith in, what do I believe in, what's my value, my purpose in this world, What do I also know? What's the knowledge that I'm bringing there into the 10th house? So you're feeding it into the 10th house. Now, the North Node over the last year already has been showing you what you are, what you feel ambitious about, how you might want to show up in the world. That can be your social identity, meaning like marriage, not married, whatever social status, but it can also be your career or vocational status. The 10th house is what you feel is important to achieve. And so this is an opportunity with Mars in your first house to really start to take action based on what you want to achieve. And I think you will find anyway that you have a lot of support around goals that you're aiming for, because you've got Mars in the first house, which is an angular house that is feeding into the 10th house North Node for 2 months, September and October, and then coming back again in December, January, February, March, or maybe January, February, March, and the first half of April. So this is it. This is a big theme. Then the node is already going to be shifting into Pisces in January. So this period of time between now and September through the middle of January, that Mars dynamic between the 1st and the 10th is going to keep you really driven and focused and very ambitious. In November and much of December, Mars will be in your money house, in the second house. Then in a trinal aspect to that North Node. So it's pulling in whatever you feel you need to do, thing that you need to invest in through your blood, sweat, and tears, through the thing that you're going to pull forward, how you take action, what your goals and ambitions are. That's all Mars words. And you'll pull it forward into your 10th house. Mars also rules your 5th house, and that might have something to do with children. But at the time of this eclipse, the 5th house is not so strongly affected, except indirectly by aspects. So I'm going to set that aside. That may or may not be your case, but I'm just going to set that aside for now. And then, of course, we also have the 3rd house very busy with Mercury, very happy in the house of its ruler, or in the sign rather of its rulership and exaltation. And then we have the Sun there with Mercury, which now is approaching the beams of the Sun. So it's getting less and less visible. As I'm recording this today, which is the 27th of August, Mercury is becoming visible in the next couple of days, becoming very bright in the sky because it's far enough away from the Sun. But that's fine, because Mercury anyway is giving us a lot since July. It's been giving us a lot of information between Leo and Mercury, or rather Leo and Virgo, that you can use right now, informing the Sun, the solar aspect of this eclipse in Virgo, informing your discernment, informing your creative expression through writing, perhaps. 3rd house is skills and writing, communication. It's artistic skills as well. You have Venus in the 4th house of home and family and lineage and housing and property, your psychological or emotional foundation. So there may be something there also that is showing you what you need to receive, how you need to receive it, what you need to create from the home. This could be that it's about work, because Venus is tying into the 11th house, which she also rules, where we find Uranus. And so there might be something that has to do with financial gains from work that you do at home, or it can be through simply embellishing your home, making it beautiful and comfortable. And at the very least, there can be some harmony in the home around this time. She is in opposition to Chiron in the 10th house. And so home might also have something to do with needing a way of healing how you show up in the world, a way of healing any insecurities around your social status, or around your work status, or around your career ambitions. And that can be very informative. It can be very healing for you, because we've got that Venus in a very strong place. She's in a really dynamic, strong position, she's not only angular, but she's also in her own home, and she's trining Jupiter. So it's whatever this is, it's healing, but it's going to come through with some brilliant lessons for you that can be quite spiritual. So Jupiter, of course, ruling your ninth house of your vision for your future, where the moon is bringing that into your awareness. How do I deal with all of that? And the tension might be where there can be some dispersion or loss that Jupiter might be highlighting in the 12th house. That can also be that you're needing to separate or step away and retreat, move away to get where you want to go with that North Node. It's a bit paradoxical there, but it can also mean that you're quite happy to back away, taking some time off. Now, that's not new. Jupiter has been there since when? Since the beginning, since the 9th of, is it the 9th of June of 2024. So it's been 2 months at this point, June, July, August, 3 months at this point. So it's not new for you, but Jupiter is testing, let's say the moon testing Saturn by square, testing the sun by square, that can have you feeling that whatever the thing is, the big idea or the big expansion that Jupiter is trying to incite you towards, there might be some obstacles that you realize at this time, especially because Saturn is conjoining that moon with the square energy. It's like, yay, and then, oh no. It's hard to really be sure what that looks like, but it's not going to be dramatic for sure. I think it's going to be something that's much more of an awareness of capacity. That's often the Jupiter squaring Saturn. I'm speaking as a poster girl for Jupiter square Saturn from Gemini to Pisces, and that is that there can be this desire to do a lot and a wish to have the capacity to do more, but then you realize, I just can't do it all. And so you just have to be selective, and that's where the Virgo Mercury and Sun can help a lot. Be discerning, be selective in what it is, and be focused on the reason why you're doing what you're doing, which is that North Node. So the actions that you take, first house feeding into the North Node, 10th house with discernment. Briefly, we have Pluto backing into the 7th house, and this is creating a grand trine then with the Sun and Uranus from 3, 7, and 11. Those are known as the pleasure houses and the karma houses. And so there might be something here that you're realizing about your joy, your pleasure, the way that you reach out into the world, how you do that with other people. They're also social houses. So there's something here changing the way that you connect with people through relationships of all kinds, whether that be affiliations that are, I don't know, religious, spiritual, social, political, or individual. All of it would apply potentially because of the trine. Can do something to do with your cousins, with your siblings. Third house is extended family, with Mercury there that represents siblings, can represent children as well. And then, of course, the 11th house is the elder sibling. So this might pull in issues to do with siblings, not necessarily bad, just something that's coming through them. Maybe you're meeting somebody through neighbors, cousins, siblings, people that you know, people who know your name. That's the 3rd house. People that kind of, you're the lady who does whatever. Right. I think that's pretty much it here for Cancer rising. There's a lot to chew on here. There's a lot to work with going forward, and it seems to be quite helpful, quite supportive. The solution to where you want to go is in the action that you take, and that the action be more tending towards assertion rather than aggression, and that will work sustainably in the long run. All right, Cancer, good luck with that. I'll see you in the next video. Leo, this full moon is highlighting your 8th house, where we've already for a long, long time been talking about Saturn and Neptune, which are getting closer and closer, a very important feature of the next couple of years. And the moon, I think, is highlighting something of how this is taking shape for you. Don't think of this as like, I need to figure this out now. so I can deal with the next 2 years. It's just like, what's going on right now? What is the thing that's really relevant? And you'll start to see how these things are showing you what is necessary, what's necessary to change, maybe, or to become, at the very least, become aware of. With Saturn, Moon, Neptune in your eighth house, you're probably having a lot of responsibility put on your own shoulders. That the sun is in the second house with Mercury, very strong. And so you probably have a sense that you've got to, the sun represents you, it's your ruler. So you have a sense that you have to put a lot of effort into your earnings, the money, the income, the valuables that you have, but also that represents family. But this doesn't, it looks quite good in so many ways in terms of all of those things, the money things, because you also have Jupiter in the 11th, and that is ruled by that Mercury second house. And the thing is really about the eighth house of intimacy, or about surprises or challenges, or potentially also psychological issues. You do have Mars, which rules your fourth house of your deeper psychological nature, in your 12th house of the self undoing, or the aspects of self that might be unconscious. Um, it might just simply be calling you to go away. Mars in the 12th is a separating quality. It's about moving away or separating, isolating yourself, one way that can look. And that can be a healing thing to do. So the ninth house is ruled by Mars too. That's where we find the North Node, and Mars is squaring the North Node at the time of this eclipse. And what's happening here is that the eclipse is showing us in many ways how you need to use the inner awareness, or the deeper psychological awareness, or the awareness of things that are going on behind the scenes, and pull it into what it is you understand about your vision for your purpose in life, or the thing that you want to do. It's being supported a lot by Jupiter in the 11th house of your future and your hopes and dreams for the future. And when Jupiter's in the 11th, you get a lot of support from people well-placed, people in high places. So that's all looking quite nice. You've got Venus in the third as well. Venus is trining that Jupiter. So these are social houses. So it does look like you're getting, at the very least, moral support or friendly support from people to do what it is that you'd like to do. You might be meeting more people, having more connections. And even if financially it feels like there's more of a burden or a feeling of lack or limitation because of that Saturn in the eighth house, it does seem like that you've got a lot going for yourself, that you yourself are able to deal with quite a lot on your own without the help of others. It helps you to mature, let's say, or to take responsibility for the things that you are able to control. We have the retrograding Pluto going back in your sixth house one last time. So that's the last time that it will be trining the sun from your second to your sixth. And it's also creating a grand Earth trine with Uranus in your 10th. So there's a lot of attention at this time around the eclipse, really for the last time. In terms of the earth trines, the money houses, the work houses, it's the last time that we're looking at this trine, this flowing energy that says something needs to change. I'm aware of what that is because it's based on something that's happened in the past, that Pluto coming back to where it's already been over the last year and a half. If you're interested in that story, then look at my Pluto videos to see the dynamic there between the last degree of Capricorn and going into the early stages of Aquarius. So it does look like there's a lot of dynamism around work. You might be thinking about changing jobs. You might be thinking about where can I go next? Uranus probably won't take you there until next year. It probably will be 2025 before you really start to feel that there's now this new thing. I would have to see your chart to know for sure. But let's say in a general sense, in an archetypal sense, the changes that have been underway for the last 7-ish years in your 10th house of social status and your career are really, they're closing down now. And with Pluto going back into your sixth, it's just tying up loose ends for the next 2.5 or so months to complete that cycle. move beyond those last 16 years, which with Pluto in the sixth will have been trying. They will have been difficult, potentially also with connection to health issues, obligations, health issues, challenges to overcome. So you're nearly there. The light is at the end of the tunnel there, Leo. So good luck with that. I think I've covered all the bases here for you, and I'll see you in the next video. Virgo, so this, of course, is happening in your house of relationship, right across the table from you. We find the moon with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And so that's really highlighting an aspect of yourself that is in terms of how you relate to others. Do listen to the introduction to this video, because I think that can be quite instructive for you as a Virgo sun, moon, or rising. I often say this with Virgos because of that Pisces on the 7th, and particularly so because we've got Neptune in the 7th. You have a tendency to go and pick up strays and try and sort everybody else out and fix them like a little project, or take care of them, or people gravitate towards you even unconsciously, of course, mostly unconsciously, and wishing that you would sort them out, seeing something in you that they can recognize as reliable, and that allows them to continue to be unreliable. So here's where you want to use that awareness of that Pisces moon in the 7th house, which is, what am I tolerating that I shouldn't tolerate any longer in relationships, in business partnerships, in intimacy, in connections with people. And that even also potentially could be an advisor or a therapist. Like you might be recognizing where you've come to the end of the road with any one of the above. Or at least you've come to an understanding of what your role is in that. So this has a lot to do with that dynamic of savior, victim, savior, perpetrator. It's all this triad that moves through different stages. There is also the victim martyr energy. To what extent do you allow things to happen and then complain about them? So notice these patterns, because they might be there in the relationship dynamic for you, Virgo. It's really important for you to pay attention to that, because this dynamic is going to show itself up again and again and again for a couple of years. There's a long, there's a lot going on in your 7th house in the next year and a half or two. You have the advantage now of having your ruler in your 1st house, which is always lovely. And it was there in July. It's back now, completing that cycle. And with Mercury and the sun there, you have this, again, that superpower of discernment that allows you to clarify a lot of what it is that's being revealed in your relationships at the moment. Remember, this applies to the time around the eclipse, but it also applies going forward, maybe 6 to 12 months or longer if we think about the entire cycle. You have a trine from your 1st house, where the sun is, to Pluto in your 5th and Uranus in your 9th house. So there is something here that has you feeling fresh, maybe ready to take a risk or to do something that allows you to feel like now you get a sense of direction or purpose that wasn't really that clear for you before. It might be calling in something you tried before or that you knew before. This might even be about a relationship that you tried before that you're trying again. Let's see how this works. And the potential is there that it can work. It's just that you have to beware. What's my motivation with that moon in Pisces in the 7th? What's my motivation for being in this relationship? The Neptune there may sometimes either exaggerate or cloud judgment, clouding emotions, romanticizing. I'd have to see your chart. That's not a given. It's just something that's a potential. Friendly warning from your astrologer. And so here we have the Pluto in your 5th, just peeping back in after 16 years, one last time going back in there, saying, Pluto in the 5th, I want to show up. I want to be noticed. I need this to represent who I am now. That has been a long period of transformation in terms of your creative self-expression as a Virgo rising, as a Virgo sun or moon. That Pluto has been 5, signs away from you. And so that is really about finding courage, finding who am I? How do I show up in terms of my creative self-expression? To what extent do I feel comfortable in that? Now, when Pluto understands that, it's understanding based on the trine to the ninth house of what's my purpose. It's going to then feed it back into your sixth house of your everyday life, your work, and so on. And then next year, as Uranus goes into your 10th, it's also going to feed into how do I do this out in the world? So a really interesting dynamic for you, Virgo. And again, these are important houses for you with the first, seventh, and 10th being really strongly highlighted. Of course, Jupiter in your 10th is fantastic for expansion through your relationship identity in terms of your social status or your career, your vocation, your ambitions. Lots preoccupying you in that direction that gives you a sense of what is possible in the future. Venus is in your house of money, trining that 10th house. So that also looks really, really good in terms of something productive or supportive, let's say, around income, money, potentially family support as well. Venus in the second house, second house is family support. What else have we got here? So yeah, the Jupiter from the 10th is ruling all of that seventh house activity until next July 2025. And so there's going to be a constant tie-in between you, your life partner, your work or your business partner or business relationships of some kind, client relationships, and that Jupiter in the 10th. So this vision of something bigger and more expansive for yourself. So it's a really lovely time. You're really reaching into a vision for your future. You will transform your career once Uranus goes in there, but Jupiter is just giving you a boost in terms of your sense of your aims. Now we've got Mars in the 11th, which also gives you a really strong, let's call it a push towards your future. It has to be said, Mars in the 11th can potentially also create some struggles in terms of friendships or groups of people. There might be some tensions that can be there. There might be too much of a dynamism. There may be a tendency with the Virgo energy, there can be a tendency to need to control things, to have them look a particular way, because Virgo has their ways of wanting things to look. You want to go towards that Pisces energy to let that go and say, actually, it resolves over time. It all resolves. So so that Mars, you can relativize a little bit. Mars is squaring the nodes from your second to your eighth, in the 11th house of gains from your career as well. So there might be something here that's coming through, money that you earn or money that you receive from somebody else. Again, I'd need to see your chart. Not all natal charts allow for us to inherit or get money from other people or to get lottery gains and so on. It depends on your natal promise, called the natal promise. All right, I think that's it for now. There's a lot going for Virgos and Pisces, of course. So I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video. So Libra, we're looking at sixth house, let's say awareness, and awareness of what's going on in your everyday life and your health, how your work life balance might be, what your I hate that saying, work-life balance. I think for me anyway, I feel like we should just live and the work be part of our life. It's not that we should work and then all of a sudden start living when we're not working. Ideally, that's where we're going with that, I'd hope. Anyway, so let's call it the everyday stuff that you have to become aware of, the responsibilities. Certainly with Neptune, Saturn going through your sixth house, there will have been a feeling for the last little while, year and a half at the least, and certainly 13 years now with Neptune, of maybe having to do more than you feel you should be doing. You're doing it anyway, and that's the thing to become aware of, because we want to get over this victim martyr dynamic, which is there built into the 6th, 12th house dynamic. You've got it reversed. So Pisces in the 6th, Virgo in the 12th. Pay attention to where you might feel victimized, where you might be sacrificing something. Remember, as a suffix to every complaint, you want to say, I choose this, right? So I'm doing more work than anyone else, and I choose this, for example. So keep that in mind, because that energy of the sixth house can be insidious. It can make you think that you're really put upon, and that it's always in your nature as a Libra to want to please, to want to take care of others. Now you've got Venus in your first house, which is really lovely. And she's going to be helping you stay gracious and be in harmony. And that is what Libra is looking for, not always what they are. Um, but bear in mind that you might again be undermining yourself by your over concern with what other people might need. And that's especially true as we've got both Chiron and the North Node in your seventh house. So there's maybe an over concern or an over giving, either at work or in terms of setting aside your own needs to take care of others. Now, of course, at times in our life, we have to do that. That's just normal. However, that's worth checking if it's a longer term pattern, which is being suggested by both the nodes as well as the Saturn and Neptune embracing, not to say crowding out the moon here. So lots to be revealed. This can also be about health. So you become aware, perhaps, of a health issue that needs to be resolved. With Neptune there, it may be psychosomatic. It may be something that is emotionally related. That is not necessarily like you got hit by a bus and now you've got a broken leg. It's that there's something that's been building, especially because we've got Pluto. Now you've had 16 years of Pluto going through your house of your inner psychology, your emotional nature, your foundation for life, which is difficult. It's challenging because it's really doing some deep excavation on your inner workings, let's say, your psychological workings. And we've got Uranus going through the eighth, and now we have the Mercury Sun revealing something also in your 12th house. All of these psycho-emotional houses revealing something to you. So here, yeah, take some time, as much as you can, to reflect on the quality of the last 16 years, and then especially right now, around the time of the eclipses, where you take some time to try and understand all these bigger motivations, bigger factors that have been driving you, and how that might look going forward as you change. Because now with Pluto going in the fifth, it's going to be trining your first house, and that's going to bring in this opportunity for you to see a new way of expressing yourself, a new way of showing yourself to the world, which you've had a glimpse of now, but this eclipse is really pushing now towards how you relate to others and who they should be, and how you relate to your sense of obligation and duty. And is that working for your mental, physical, psychological health or emotional health with the moon there? We've got Jupiter in the ninth, and Jupiter is a very happy camper in the ninth house. Most planets are, and that brings a lot of vision to your life as well, this sense of what you're here for. At the very least, it feels very expansive in terms of what you might feel is potential, what you believe in, what you have faith in. Jupiter is trining that first house of self, so lifting you up, making you feel more the potentials or the possibilities for life. You've got Mars in the 10th, so your work, your ambitions, your life goals, your career goals. There's a lot of drive there. There may be some tension that can be there with people in positions of power when Mars goes across the 10th. And that is also because Mars is ruling the North Node in your seventh. Mars rules anyway your seventh house. And when Mars is there in the 10th house, there can be a really strong drive to succeed or to potentially even to dominate in terms of the work that you're doing. So just be aware that that might be the tendency, and that you're not necessarily elbowing out somebody who otherwise might be willing to help you. Not easy to be a team player when Mars is in the 10th. Mars does well in the 10th because it's ambitious and it's driven, which is part of the qualities of the 10th. But it's worth paying attention also to how you might come across. There may be a feeling of being threatening in terms of your work position. There may be a need for adjustment, let's say, in terms of all relationship dynamics with that North and South Node axis and the Aries Libra axis, and then squared by that Mars very, very, very tightly at this eclipse. So yeah, and Mars is there for a long time. So you want to get used to this energy. In the beginning, it's usually it really heats up. So it's already been there now 2 weeks at the point of the eclipse. If you're watching this early, then it's just moving in on the 3rd, 4th of September. So just keep that in mind in terms of the difference between assertion and aggression. The Mars in your chart rules not only the 7th of relationship, but also the 2nd house of money and income and so on. So you might be driven by money. You might be driven by potentially a feeling of lack that depends on your chart as well. And if that is true, then go back to the dynamic between Pisces and Virgo, the 6th and 12th houses, where you question the feeling of victimization or lack or being subjected to, sacrificing yourself and so on and so on. Those are very disempowering energies, and it's easy to believe them. So the question is, what am I choosing? And that's Mars. Mars is choice. Mars is the drive that gives you the choice. All right, I think that's pretty much it for Libra. So good luck with all of that. I'll see you in the next video. And Scorpio, here we have the eclipse. Sorry, this is now shifting out or what? We're going to have to just pretend that the moon is still in Pisces for Scorpio. We have the moon squashed between Saturn and Neptune at the time of the eclipse. And maybe if I go backwards in time, it'll help me because I want to keep that moon in Pisces. So hang on, bear with me here when we go zooming back through until we get you on the other side. So Scorpio, there we are. All right, good enough. So here we have the moon, which is not conjunct Saturn so closely, but squeezed between Saturn and Neptune. And it's in your 5th house of your creative expression, children, your sense of joy, what makes you happy. This may not have been an easy thing this year for whether it be your ascended sun or your moon sign in Scorpio, where you may have felt that there's been quite a lot of hard work, especially initially, especially 2023, around issues to do with children or your creativity or love affairs. You may have had to break one up, or you may have had to realize that you've had to put so much effort into that, or you might even feel alone. You might feel that you have had difficulties in really feeling that kind of heart level connection with someone, or the creative connection, if that's indeed an aspect of your creative input, your creative work. So here we've got a lot of energy for the next couple of years in that 5th house. Most especially because the eclipse cycles will repeat here in that Mars and Virgo axis, sorry, in the Pisces and Virgo axis, and also because we've got the Saturn-Neptune energy building. So there will be a lot of emphasis there. So keep bringing yourself towards how can I express myself creatively? What do I need to change in terms of how I relate to people? What do I need to restructure so that I can build more of a sense of creative or dynamic or risk-taking kind of energy in my life? We have Mars, which is your ruler in the 9th house, creating a trine to your 1st house, trining that 5th house. And that's really dynamic. It has you feeling a sense of purpose that's like a higher drive. Sort of 9th house Mars is like this spiritual warrior. You've got this really strong energy for what you feel is right, but be careful because it's in Cancer, so it's not necessarily an easy Mars to handle. And it's also squaring the nodal axis, which is between your 6th and 12th, the house of healing, health, illness, day-to-day obligations that Mars is now ruling and squaring from the ninth house. So what you feel is important, what you feel you're driven by may require some kind of adjustment on the ground in terms of the North Node, sixth house, whatever that is feeding into the sixth house. So you might need to change your work or find more meaning and purpose to your work to energize the tasks that you have or the feeling of responsibility that you have. Certainly the last year has been very focused on your work, whether that be building up your career or about the day-to-day input around your work, obligations and difficulties that you've had to overcome to achieve your goals or the thing that you find important. And hang on, just close the door for quiet. And and Chiron, of course, has been in the sixth house. And so Chiron in the sixth house is very much about your connection to your sense of what you need to do, what you feel you are obliged to do compared to what you feel is right for you to do. Now, again, be careful, that can also tie into this victim martyr energy. So notice where you might be underselling yourself or you might be feeling obligated when it's not your problem. Get used to understanding what is yours and what's not yours in terms of the input and things that you need to do every day. Do take care of your health because your ruler, Mars, rules the sixth house. And when it's in Cancer, there can be issues around digestion, the stomach, emotional issues that cause disruption. That I would have to see your natal chart to know if that's a particular issue for you, but just as a general rule, just notice those things, take care of your health. Venus is in the 12th house, and so that's also a potential for things that are behind the scenes, whether that be a relationship or desire nature of something that you desire that's behind the scenes. There can be a relationship that is long distance, for example. Venus in the 12th, faraway lands, people from far away, having a lover far away. Which is not in and of itself a problem. It's just that it's not easy on the everyday level here. Back in the sixth house, we've got Chiron that says this is not easy, whatever that is. If it's about money, if there's any issue around money, because we do have the Venus is trining Jupiter from the 8th house. Money can come through loss, potentially. The Jupiter in the 8th house might come from, well, potentially it can come through spousal income or money that your spouse is earning or that you find now is potentially there for you due to a relationship, but it can also come through an inheritance, for example, and therefore there might be something of a loss that's involved in gaining money. Venus in the 12th also, if there is an issue around a relationship and it's not either known or it's something that you've been avoiding telling or you have to keep secret for whatever reason, sometimes nefarious, sometimes just because of this decorum, that's something that you will want to mind, because that might reveal itself when Venus goes in the first house soon enough after this eclipse. So she'll go in the first house in the last week of September. Yeah, Venus in the 12th also can also be conducive of going away, traveling long distance, especially with Mars in the 9th. So this could be that you're going away for relationship reasons or even for work reasons, for reasons of pilgrimage or for reasons of retreat in some way, shape, or form, or for a romantic getaway. Let's see, Venus rules your 7th house of relationship, where we find Uranus, which is trining the sun, and trining Pluto, which is now back in your 3rd house. So there's something here that has a lot to do with groups of people, how you connect to communicating with people or connecting with people of all kinds. And And so again, with Venus in the 12th, there might be something that has a foreign feeling to that, or far people at a distance. Pluto will be in your third house until 19th of November for the last time. So this is the last time you're going to have this combination of the Sun trining Pluto, trining Uranus from the 11th, 3rd, and 7th houses. This will never reappear in your lifetime. So a very interesting opportunity to become aware of how you might find your goals, especially over the last 16 years, and how you've been reassessing perhaps your sense of what are your life aims, or what it is that you need to put more, so let's say elbow grease into, or how you communicate with people, how you've been developing a capacity to communicate, maybe speaking with more of a sense of authority or gravitas, and how that's influenced you. And this is this last sort of blast in that direction, influencing relationships. And then Pluto and Uranus move into the more hidden areas, more intimate, let's say, areas of your life, and really transforming you deeply from the inside out. I think we've said it all there, Scorpio. I think that's all I need to communicate with you. Make sure you listen to the introduction again, of course, or if you hadn't, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Sagittarius, this is happening in your house of home and family, property, lineage, what brings you security emotionally, psychologically, that awareness, let's say, of what it is that you need to be happy. That's the fourth house. How you get that happiness goes into the fifth house. So here you're really working on that. And certainly since last year, that has been a big part of the program of feeling restrictions. But now the moon is showing you something. It's showing you what you need to become aware of in a way that is going to tie in the next couple of years, where Saturn and Neptune are pulling a lot of energy into your fifth house by way of the fourth house. So you're really trying to understand yourself, trying to understand where you're coming from, so that you can bring it out into your self-expression, into your creativity, into the life of your children, potentially even having children, for example, or changing your relationship to children you already have. They're, maybe moving out or something like that. That's another thing with Saturn in the fourth. Maybe that can also be part of that, where Saturn in the fourth is preparing you for the empty nest. The other aspect of this is that the moon is ruled, or all these planets in your fourth house, as well as you yourself, ascendant, sun, moon, and rising, Sagittarius, are ruled by Jupiter in the seventh house in Gemini. And so partnerships, relationships, it could be even counselors or people who advise you, important relationships are having a huge influence on you right now. Now, when Jupiter goes through the seventh house, it's not necessarily going to bring you a new relationship. It absolutely could do. But often what can happen is that relationships come to a helpful end, in a way that allows you to realize, oh, this is better for me. Not easy by any means. Doesn't mean that it's like a joyful thing or it's easy. It's just whatever is happening in the house of relationships is going to be better for you. And sometimes it is better to not be in certain relationships. So Jupiter doesn't always bring what we want. It brings what we need to grow in terms of our life vision, or our belief system, or our wisdom. How can we gain wisdom? This is what Jupiter asks. In your case, you're gaining wisdom through your connection to others, how you connect, your relationship energy. That continues from June 2024 all the way through July of 2025. And it continues to rule your fourth house through the whole of this period of time, where there's a lot of dynamic with the North Node then going into your fourth house, putting a lot of your attention on your home and your sense of security and what you need emotionally and psychologically, or how you also connect to your family, potentially. Now, Mars is in the eighth house, ruling that North Node in the fifth house. Mars in the eighth house, especially in Cancer, can have it can reflect some issues where there might be tension around family shared resources, family secrets, family drama, or issues that are things that are difficult to acknowledge or difficult to handle. Mars rules your 12th house of, again, the ancestral or hidden aspects of life, things that have come through unconsciously or things that we have to recognize are disruptive for ourselves. And then Mars also rules your fifth house of fun, happiness, love affairs, and so on. So there's something here from the house of intimacy. Now, again, best case scenario is that there is a new relationship or a dynamic in the relationship you're already in where there's a lot of passion and excitement. I want to bring back this notion of the moon in Pisces, as I mentioned from the beginning, which says, what am I tolerating emotionally or within the context of a neighbor or let's say behavior of anyone that I shouldn't be tolerating? Where am I over giving? My, what's that word? Benefit of the doubt. That would be one way of looking at that. So it can be, again, it would have to depend on your natal chart. But we've got Venus in the 11th. That's very friendly. She's in a trine to that Jupiter. So you might also be meeting a relationship, having a new connection with somebody based on a connection with a friend or based on a group that you belong to, based on something that you're doing. And at the very least, Venus is giving you a boost, which she does every 9 months or so in your 11th house of your vision for your future and your socializing. So that's quite a nice dynamic. It's a supportive dynamic with that trine going to your seventh Venus Jupiter trine. So it's not necessarily as bad as the Mars can sound. It may be that there's just a lot of niggly behind the scenes kind of work that needs to be done with the Mars in the eighth. Now that Mars eighth house transit is going to last for a long time. It's basically from September through mid-April with a break in kind of November, December when Mars goes into your ninth house. So there's going to be a lot of work going back into your any issues around fear or trauma or secrets or intimacy of any kind or emotional stuff with the family. Could be something to do with marriage, division of property, or legacies and so on. It may not be easy because Mars in the eighth house is simply not. It is and again, it depends on the quality of your own chart, but it depends on what Mars is doing in your own chart and so on and so on. It depends on your own ascendant ruler, meaning what is Jupiter like in your chart. That also sets up the entire flavor of the story. We've got the Sun and Mercury also, of course, in the 10th house, while the moon is there in your fourth house. So there's also quite a lot of focus at this time on your career and your work and how you do the work that you're doing out in the world. And then the moon is asking, do I like this? Is this what I want? Is this the thing that I need to keep doing? And the moon Neptune. Am I disappointed in anything, or am I not really looking clearly at this, or am I finally looking clearly at this? Any of the above. All right, so lots of change anyway underway because Pluto is back in your money house. That's also representing family. Second house is your income. It's your wealth in general. It's also, of course, whatever supports you. So the Pluto moving back in there, Uranus at the end of the sixth house and the Sun at the end of the 10th house is pulling in these earth houses. So questions around money, your work, your obligations in life are really going to get a boost in terms of a feeling of, okay, I got this, I can make this work now. And it's based on, am I understanding clearly what I need emotionally, psychologically? Am I doing the right thing? Am I extending a sense of tolerance where it is legitimate, or am I not? Am I not seeing clearly? These are the questions again from the introduction. So have a listen again to that. So good luck with that, Sagittarius. I'll see you in the next video. And so Capricorn, this is happening in your third house. It's about potentially about siblings or extended family issues. It's about what you are doing in your local space in terms of your neighborhood or the environment around you. This is an ongoing topic because you've already had Saturn, your ruler, as well as Neptune in the third house for a very, very long time. So this question of your local space and your siblings and extended family relationships, how you communicate is a very big one. The third house is also your sense of your goals, more in the sort of sense of your short-term goals, and then also how you apply them, your willpower. And so maybe you're recognizing something here about where you need to become aware, or you will become aware of how those things are affecting you overall. The North Node, which is also significant, is pulling that third house energy into the fourth, as we're going to very slowly be merging that Neptune North Node into February next year in a quite a spectacular chart at the beginning of February. And so think in terms also of what it is that you want to express, how you want to reach out in these areas once now you've kind of sorted out the behind the scenes details of these third house topics that can also, by the way, include business, commerce, exchanges of all kinds, especially as your ruler is there, ruled by Jupiter, which is in your sixth house of everyday work. Maybe you're deciding that how to reorganize or organize an everyday business kind of situation. That north node in the fourth house is showing you what it is that you need in terms of your security. And that can be financial, or it can be something to do with relationships. It can be something to do with your psychological security, or how you are acting now to set yourself up for the future. Mars also rules your 11th house of the future. Mars is currently in your house of partnerships. It may be that the way that you are doing partnerships needs adjustment. And certainly Mars is showing that there's a new way of acting, a choice that needs to be made, as Mars is squaring the nodal axis from your seventh to the fourth, where it rules the north node. It's suggesting something in terms of career ambitions is being affected here based on how you're interacting with partners. Now, that can be your life partner, business partner, close friends, family issues of some sort. This is especially true for a Capricorn ascendant, but it's also true for the sun and the moon. And just as an aside, like for example, you've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has a massive Capricorn stellium. And so in this case, a stellium, I also, by the way, always recommend you watch for your stellium. I put that in the notes below this, in the description below each video. But the Mars, for example, in the house of relationship is suggesting that the choice has to be made in terms of who you team up with. So we may still yet see that there's a dynamic in terms of the relationship, that he has chosen, one side over another, or he's chosen a particular person to work with, and now there's a choice that needs to be made based on all of the things that I've just outlined. So that's one way of looking at this. That's just an example. It might be your example in a smaller scale way. Also, we have Pluto now, very briefly, back into your first house. You've had 16 years, Capricorn. Congratulations. You've had Pluto going through your first house. You're nearly done. September, October, and the first 3 weeks of November, it's still there in the end of your first house. And it's in a sextile to Neptune and in a trine to Uranus. So something between your vision for yourself and the way you express yourself is changing, and that's going to pull into how you earn money, the feeling of wealth, what supports you with the Pluto going into the second as of November, and also the Uranus going into the sixth house, moving all that dynamic of how you express yourself, how you show up over the last 6.5 years, 6.5 years. It'll be 7 by 2025 when Uranus moves into your sixth house of your day-to-day work, changing your life day-to-day, changing the area of what you do on an everyday basis. You've got Venus in the 10th. as well. And Venus in the 10th can be very helpful in terms of this business negotiation thing. But I think really the question, the essence is this Mars. Mars is exalted as the exaltation ruler of Capricorn. So it's always important for you as a Capricorn to follow what Mars is doing, because it's part of the dynamic here with your Saturn as your ruler, your sign ruler, and Mars as your exaltation ruler. So it's important that this is squaring the nodes right now, especially as it's ruling there, that north node. So Venus is helpful, maybe smoothing the way, helping things to appear graceful on the surface, kind of like that duck that's kind of smoothly humming along with the feet just going like crazy under the water. It might be a wee bit of that. So it may not entirely be what we see. Things may not be what we see for Capricorns, but it looks good. And the sun is in its happy place. The sun is in its joy in the ninth house, and Mercury is exalted and in its house of rulership in Virgo, trining the first house, trining the fifth house. So pulling in a lot of really supportive energy in terms of what you feel you're ready to achieve in terms of your purpose. So this is actually quite a nice energy for Capricorns in general. You've got a lot of angular house energy here, as you anyway do because of that nodal axis, but now especially so because Mars is adding to that, Venus is adding to that, and most especially Pluto is back. And so I think I might do another video just on the Pluto, just one last hurrah, one last goodbye as Pluto leaves us sort of torn in shreds on the sidewalk, September through November. So I think that's it for Capricorn. I think I've said what I wanted to in terms of what you will hopefully glean from this eclipse. And I wish you all the best. I'll see you in the next video. So Aquarius, you're having this eclipse along with your ruler Saturn in the second house. This is the house of money, your self-worth, your valuables, the stuff of your life, the stuff that you have. And this is quite significant because this is an eclipse that will set up the next couple of years. You're going to be having more and more of your own energy changed as Saturn gets closer to Neptune. So the moon, as it is right now in Pisces in your second house, is showing you something of how to unite these two, how to pull that Saturn and Neptune energy together in terms of what you're becoming aware of in the area of your finances, or where you feel support financially or otherwise, perhaps from family, potentially. How you might need to support others, or where you're feeling support, especially with Saturn in the second, you're probably the one supporting others. And now Jupiter is in the fifth. So maybe it's all about your kids or a business project that you're putting a lot of money into, you're investing a lot into with Jupiter in the fifth, taking a chance, taking a risk. If that is the dynamic and you're taking a risk, then pay attention to the moon, because the moon is showing you something while Saturn is retrograding. Neptune is retrograding, and that's showing you something that you should feel intuitively. So I don't know what that is, because I need you to sit quietly and feel that intuitively. And Pluto is moving back into your 12th, so that'll also help you, because it'll pull back something that Pluto has helped you understand in your intuition, in your sense of what's behind the eyes. And it's trining the sun, and Mercury is also there in the 8th house of other people's money, investing partners, etc. And that's trining Uranus in the 4th house. So these are also psychological houses. So sit quietly as much as you can around this time, sit quietly and feel your way through what seems to be the right thing to do, especially if you feel like you are ready to take a risk and jump in a new direction. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't. I'm just suggesting that you want to be really highly tuned to your intuition. Feel that in the navel center in Swadhisthana, in the second chakra and area of your life, in that area of creativity, maybe fasting, or especially because the moon and Saturn with Neptune are in the second house of your body, Mars in your 6th house, ruled by that moon. So fasting actually can bring you some help. And when I say fasting, it can be a number of different ways. I'm not suggesting one way or another, but when you do take some breaks from food, that allows you to clarify the mind unless the problem is the food itself. If that's the case, then the moon is already showing you that. So I would have to see your chart to say more about that. These are just thoughts, general thoughts based on the archetypes. So here we have the North Node in the third house of your communication, business. Again, potentially that's one of the reasons I'm saying this can be with that Jupiter in the fifth, a great opportunity or something that you need to jump into. Maybe you're ready for expanding, you're ready for action to be taken. But go really deep into that intuitive place. What am I being told in this moment? The Sun and Mercury in the eighth, Pluto in the 12th can really give you information that feeds into all of what you need to know to accomplish that North Node based on Mars in the sixth house, which is hard work. It's good having Mars or Saturn in the sixth house. Because that allows for a feeling of overcoming. You've got drive, you've got this capacity to achieve something. So there's a really strong feeling of, got this, I can do this thing. And so you're going to have that Mars for a long time, until mid-April, essentially, in your sixth house, with a kind of November, December, where it will be in your, just in the beginning of your seventh. This will be the period of time where with the Mars-Pluto opposition that's going to affect you very strongly with your relationships and your work. So much to say there for Aquarius, because you're really part of this configuration of really deep change with the Pluto going through your first house. Have I mentioned Venus? Venus is in your ninth, so really favorable for looking into your sense of your purpose. Great for studying, great for learning new things. The North Node in the third is also very good in terms of learning skills, or having a new set of, guiding principles, let's say, and then Venus helps with all of that. Venus can make you feel really enthusiastic about learning and expanding your knowledge. Jupiter is also in the fifth, which is another house of knowledge. The fifth house is also the house of students and knowledge that we're born into or from another lifetime. And then Jupiter is in Gemini, which is, of course, very strongly connected to teaching and knowledge of all kinds. And then it's trining that Venus from the ninth house of teachers and wisdom, etc. So a good time to apply knowledge to whatever it is that you're aiming for in this second house, which may be around financial security, or at the very least, it could also be about your sense of your self-worth, your value, but looking quite beautifully supported by the ruler Jupiter. Now, keep in mind that that square between Jupiter and Saturn, your ruler, is going to keep you going like one step forward, two steps back, two steps forward, one step back. It's just going to be the nature of the beast until we get to about June of next year. But that's fine because you're fine tuning, so don't worry. The change that you're undergoing is a big lifetime shift, and if you have it all in one go, the psyche can't keep up. So just let it go. Keep working in that rhythm of slowly, which is very good for Aquarius. That such Saturn energy can help you with that, getting used to the having to overcome and having to put that effort in with Mars in the sixth. Mars is ruling your 10th, of course, as well. So it's going to bring you something of success, potentially financially successful as well with that Saturn eventually, especially as the North Node will move into the second house in January. So you are pulling in a lot of things through your own blood, sweat, and tears there with the Mars in the sixth house. If it is something to do with health, then that's something to pay close attention to. It's likely to do with inflammation, something to do with the gut, stomach, digestion, breasts. It can be around malabsorption issues. I'm just thinking in terms of the moon Saturn issue there in the second house of the body. Anyway, I'd have to see you personally to know anything more about that. So good luck with all of that. I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, of course, this is your very first lunar eclipse for this cycle. You wouldn't have had this until, except last time I think was like 2006, 2007. So this is now a whole new thing for Pisces. Same thing for the Virgo axis as well, of course, but this is a North Node Pisces. We haven't seen that for 19 years or so. And so with the Saturn, Moon, and Neptune in your first house, there's a lot of a focus on yourself, especially if you're an ascendant in Pisces, but also with the Sun or the Moon in Pisces. Do for sure listen to the introduction if any of those apply to you, because that will tell you quite a lot about this whole situation as I'm describing it here. There's a lot of awareness here that you're going to be pulling forward for the next couple of years around yourself and around how you might want to go forward um, as yourself, because the North Node will be moving into your first house in January for a year and a half. And this is kind of kicking that off. It's kind of like saying, look, these are the places to pay attention to. And then you really go full on into that come January 2025. So there's a tie-in here that is about 2 years long that is between your first house of self and the house of earnings, your earned income, the things that support you, family that supports you. Interestingly, for Pisces, um, especially Pisces ascendant, with Mars ruling the second house, Aries, often you don't get a whole lot of support, that you have to sort yourself out there in many ways. Again, it depends on your natal chart, but just from the point of view of the rulership with Mars in the second, you have to work hard for the money that you have. Which kind of goes against the grain of Pisces, because Pisces are just like, what? Come on. And so the money stuff is usually not the main driver for Pisces, but especially because you're preparing for Saturn, Neptune to go into your second house of your possessions and money, your worth, and so on, you want to be careful that you're clear around those things. It's not that you have to suddenly become money oriented. It just means that you need to become a better money manager and also managing your self-worth, which includes managing your boundaries, because Neptune in the second house can have you run into difficulties around being taken advantage of, or being wasteful, or being careless with money, having disappointments, financial disappointments, or deception. Again, maybe taking a bit of a careless or laissez-faire attitude around money. And I'm speaking towards the future now. I'm talking about when Neptune goes into your second next year and the year after, and for the next 14 years. So use this energy of Saturn to grow up and to mature in terms of what I have to do to take responsibility for myself. And this moon can really show you that. It can really highlight the different ways that you need to be there for yourself. Now you have the Sun and Mercury in your seventh house of relationship, Mercury in really strong dignity. So whatever thing is building in relationship, or if there is a new relationship at this time, there's a lot of really favorable energy for that. You have Jupiter in the fourth, so that's also very much about how you are feeling good about yourself, feeling secure in yourself, feeling emotionally or psychologically well, kind of nurtured in some way, feeling in a relatively happy place. It has to be said that it is Gemini after all. Jupiter doesn't do great in Gemini. So that can also mean that there's a certain sense of ambiguity around where you live. There might be a dynamic that has you wanting to be in different places for different reasons, either for work reasons or for reasons of a relationship. You've got that Jupiter trining Venus in the eighth house. So this might actually be something around a relationship, but it can also be, as Jupiter rules your midheaven, it can be both work and relationship related. So there's something here that, even though it's still Jupiter, which is always good, and it's your ruler, it is Gemini. And so there's always this kind of in, out, kind of not so sure, or a feeling if I need more than just one option. That's another way that I can look. So you have two homes maybe, or you have two ways of living that can satisfy that need for variety that Jupiter seems to be requiring. You have Saturn also in a square to that Jupiter for a long time. Saturn squares Jupiter really up until June of 2025. So there is something about yourself. There's a restriction on your side, or there's a need for you to make adjustments that at times prevents you from accessing this new big thing that's coming up, either emotionally or in terms of your home. So there's always going to be, for the next year or so, a little bit less than a year, there's this pushing and pulling between yourself and how you show up and your desires, what you're taking responsibility for, and the thing that makes you happy, the thing that makes you feel secure, or the actual physical home, property, house, land, family, potentially as well, because fourth house is your lineage, the family that you come from. Mars is in your fifth house. That's trining your first house of self. It's trining your ninth house that it rules. And so there can be something of a creative spark or a dynamic around love relationships, if there is one. There's a lot of energy here around relationship in general. Creative expression, creative output, dynamism around children. Depends on your chart, but if you have children, there may be some tension with your children, or there may be tension in the lives of your children. They may be having their own issues that you might need to contend with or deal with. They may be pushing back for whatever reason, like that Saturn, for example, in your first house, all of a sudden you realize, I got to do more parenting. I have to have better boundaries. I need to be more strict. And then there's a bit of pushback. That's just one example. It's just one way of looking at that. That Mars is squaring the North Node in the second house of your income, your earned income, and your resources, your wealth, your family, whatever supports you. So again, there seems to be a dynamic here that's potentially connecting what it is that you do creatively, or how you express your creative output. Can also be in terms of an entrepreneurial project that is going to have an impact on what it is that needs to change or what needs to grow in that second house, North Node Aries. And that's been a year already. It's not like that's a big surprise to you. It's just that Mars is highlighting that for quite some time to come. Mars will be from the 3rd or 4th of September all the way through mid-April in your fifth house, with a November, December break just in the early degrees of your sixth house of work. So it's quite a dynamic time, but it's supportive to you in that Pisces energy, because it's supporting by trine, and it also supports your ninth house of your sense of your higher vision, higher purpose. And so that can be quite dynamic, but it still entails some kind of responsibility for how you feed back into that second house North Node. And that Mars in the fifth will continue to rule the North Node until mid-January, and then it becomes Jupiter, that your ruler, that rules the North Node from mid-January onwards as it travels through your first house. So there will be a bigger sense of expansion, a bigger sense of potential possibilities, and so on, as Jupiter takes the relay. So maybe less tense, let's say, or less feeling of effort. What else do I need to show you? So Pluto is just back into your 11th house of your vision for your future, your integration with social groups, social circles, how you connect with groups of other people. And Pluto is there from beginning of September through till the 19th of November. So this is one last chance, one last glimpse. It creates a trine between the third house Uranus in Taurus and your seventh house Sun for the very last time. You're never going to get this grand Earth trine like this with the Sun, because the next time the Sun comes around, it will be in the air signs. So next time it trines Pluto. So something to do with relationship that is connecting you to this vision for your future that Pluto has been revising, working on, this people that you hang out with, your sense of what the future holds, what you need to be doing, reaching out into life from this connection, whatever this new connection is, this relationship or your vision for a relationship. Very good. So I think this is a pretty interesting package now. It's of course applying in September, but it continues for several months. So good luck, Pisces. It seems to be a period of really important growth. Go deep into your intuition. Don't collapse in on yourself. Don't allow yourself to go into that mode of it's all too hard, I can't do this. You really have to go with your instinct. And this is one of the Piscean strengths, is to go with your instinct, listen to your body. The moon represents the body. go deep inside and try and intuit your way forward, because especially when the North Node goes into your first house, your intuition will really serve you well. So practice already from now. So good luck with all of that, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.